So happy to have you here back at Summer Davos, Prime Minister. And as you saw, there is still a huge queue outside that we're not able to fit into this room. I guess that says something about the huge interest in your country. So I guess you take it as a compliment.
I believe that is more the interest in you rather than in me.
We know that Vietnam is a very fast-growing economy. That is not the case for all economies globally. We do expect global growth to go down to around 2.5% this year. I think in Vietnam, you're still expecting 7–8% growth this year. So it would be interesting, Prime Minister, to hear from you. Why is Vietnam so successful economically? And how can you stay successfully also moving forward, not get complacent?
Thank you very much for your question. In truth, it is true that the slowing of growth in the world is very clear. While Vietnam is against this tide, we seek to increase our growth because we have set our target, the centenary target, by 2045 to be a developed high-income country. If we are to realize that, we need 8% this year and two-digit growth in the years to come. Therefore, we need to put in a lot more effort. Of course, this is a huge challenge given the global landscape today, but we have a foundation for that. First, Vietnam has great confidence in our line of action, which is built on a methodology of Marxism, Leninism, and Ho Chi Minh thought. And Vietnam's culture over 4,000 years in the making. With this combination of Marxism, Leninism, Ho Chi Minh thought, and our culture of 4,000 years applied creatively in the current landscape. Secondly, we have full confidence in the political system under the leadership of the Communist Party of Vietnam, with the administration of a state by, for, and of the people. Third, the full participation and engagement of the people from whom comes power. Resources come from thought, power from the people, as we say. Thirdly, we have a wellspring of endogenous strength. We are now the 32nd largest economy in the world, and income approaching upper middle. Vietnam's foreign trade is now ranking 20th in the world with a high degree of openness. The fourth thing that gives us confidence is support from the international community. We currently have 17 free trade agreements, and a market all over the world, including major partners such as China, the US, the EU, Japan, the ROK, and ASEAN. Fifth, we have gathered a wealth of experience in addressing crises and challenges in the years before. We have overcome them all. And with all of this, we are confident that we would be able to achieve higher growth in the upcoming years, especially the upcoming 5 years.
You're definitely a very resilient country. But even a very resilient country like Vietnam can feel the geopolitical tension. So how do you balance between, for example, China and the US in this situation.
Vâng, câu hỏi.
This is a very good question. Last year, I was asked the same question. Vietnam's economy is hardly open. Vietnam's GDP is around 500 billion US dollars, but our total foreign trade last year, 800 billion US dollars. So any impact, even small impact from outside can create potentially large impact at home. Therefore, Vietnam requires an agile policy, especially given the competition today with the two major powers, China and the US, being both 50% of Vietnam's foreign trade. The US is Vietnam's largest export market, while China is Vietnam's largest import market, and altogether that's 50% of Vietnam's total foreign trade. Therefore, Vietnam needs to pursue balance. Balance based on the principle of Vietnam's foreign policy, which is a foreign policy line of independence, self-reliance, but diversification, multilateralization, to be a good friend and reliable partner of all countries around the world and a responsible member of the international community. Secondly, Vietnam also pursues a 4-no defense policy. No military alliance, no aligning with one country against another, no permission for a third country to use Vietnamese territory against a third country, and saying no to the use or the threat of force in international relations. Vietnam is thirdly also looking to diversify our markets, our products, our supply and production chain just in case it comes under the weather. We need to have room to maneuver. So that is a foundation upon which we balance our relations. And I think that we're doing well in this. Vietnam is a good trade partner with China. It's a good trade partner with the US, with the EU, with the ROK, with Japan and ASEAN member states. In short, we are in good balance, but we should not be complacent because things tend to go a little bit topsy-turvy recently, so we need to be prepared. We need to be calm, we need to be patient, and we need to be resilient without panicking, without being too afraid, without losing our wit. We have faced a lot of challenges in the past. We fought a war of 30 years with the US. The US had a 30-year embargo against Vietnam, and we were ready to set aside the past to make good use of commonalities, respecting differences, keeping differences to a minimum, and looking to the future. And in that way, we were able to achieve what we do today. And we have, from old enemies, become strategic, comprehensive partners today. And General Secretary To Lâm has had a very open discussion with President Trump given the event of the 2nd of April. And another thing, we choose cooperation rather than confrontation. Engaging in dialogue and cooperation while still struggling against what needs to be struggled against. We will not sacrifice our core interest to pursue this or that. So we are always in balance, but this balance is grounded in self-confidence. It is grounded in the sense of courage and boldness to make the impossible possible. The greater the challenge, the greater we have to make the effort to overcome them. So that is my answer to you. If there's anything that you found unsatisfactory in my answer, let us continue.
Let's continue, but I find your answer very satisfactory. So But I was just reflecting on something you said. You said 30 years of war with the United States, then 30 years of embargo, and now the US is your most important export market. Who would have thought that when you were fighting as a young man, as a soldier, during the Vietnam War, and someone had said to you, US will be our most important export market when I'm 50 years later Prime Minister of Vietnam, what would you have said to that person?
I do believe that that's quite a normal thing because we all need to grow up and we all have our own past, but we need to put the past behind and to move forward to the future. And therefore, we need to choose the best path for ourselves to the future. And we need to explore all of the best things, good things that happened in the past to build the future. And each person's growth depends on many factors. But the most important thing is to remain in goodwill with a strength and toward goodwill and good deeds in life, and working towards the good deeds for other people around us. And as for positions or power or wealth, I don't think it's something that stays for long. It's quite vain. And the most important thing is to work in all sincerity, to value all of the friends, all of our friends that are close to us, all of the close relationships that we have, so that we could act with humanity, with humanitarian towards one another. And that's the philosophy of sincerity, of candidness, and trust, and hope for the future, for the better future. Thank you.
An applause for that answer. Very thoughtful. At the beginning, Prime Minister, I did ask you about what kind of system has delivered the results that you've seen economically in Vietnam, and you mentioned several principles. But when I visited Vietnam the first time and recently visited, it's a very different country. And you could also say that the market economy is the basis for a lot of the economic development now in Vietnam. Is that a correct observation?
That is correct. A market economy, let's go back to the past. 40 years ago, 50 years ago, we went through war. We were a war-torn country. The 20th century saw Vietnam among the countries suffered the most in the world. The wars we have seen today does not quite compare to that in Vietnam. Currently in Vietnam, there are 3 million victims of Agent Orange, 300,000 war martyrs whose remains have yet to be found. There are UXOs everywhere, and anything we do requires a clearance of mind. So that goes to show the war that happened to us was truly awful. But we would never bend our knees, and we have to stand up. And we have identified that self-resilience is the way we have to go. We have to stand up and work with our soil, with our water, which is to say to build an economy that is independent, resilient, and self-reliant. What does this mean? This means pursuing a market economy. This means pursuing the law of supply, demand, and value. We have to face this, And we move to this from a centrally planned economy, grounded in 3 pillars. The first is to remove the bureaucratic system. The second, a multi-sector economy. And 3, a globally integrated economy. So these are the duality of this. We have to build a self-reliant, independent economy that is still engaged in international integration, because all the things that happen to us are global, a whole of people, and comprehensive. So no country can settle them alone. Not even the US, not even China can address such major issues as COVID-19, such as climate change, or even the strategic competition as we see in the world today, a trade war. All of this has to be solved. Even the greatest of tension has to be solved through discussion and concession. So on what do we build our economy of self-reliant? The first, the Vietnamese people. The second, the Vietnamese nature. And the third, the tradition of Vietnam's history, a heroic history of more than 4,000 years in the making. All of these are the ingredient for our independent economy. So these are our indigenous capability. That is fundamental, strategic, long-term, and decisive. But external resources that we can call upon would be game-changing. What is it? That is financing, that is the market, economy institution, that is technologies, that is managerial skill, and that is skilled workforce. So we have to keep in balance what Vietnam innately has, which is strategic, foundational, decisive, and external resources, support from the international community. This means financing, technology, the market economy institutions, smart administration, and human resource training. So the interaction, the interplay of external and internal resources would foster Vietnam's independent and internationally integrated economy. If we do not identify this duality, if we just depend on Vietnam, on what Vietnam has, it would be unable to achieve much. And if we depend entirely on external resources, we would also not achieve what we have today. So that is my answer to your question.
Thank you. You're underpinning the big changes that are also happening in the interactions between countries. We had a thinking for decades of win-win. What is good for you is good for me, and vice versa. And now we are seeing more of a competition. And there is concerns that we will see the law of the jungle coming back. How do you see the world being organized in the future realistically, where you can of course, there will be competition, but there also has to be cooperation on the areas you mentioned, like future pandemics, climate change, cybercrime. Could Vietnam be someone that could bring countries together and shape a path forward? Or are we going to be in very tough competition only in the coming years?
I do think that a country's span is like our own life. We will always see the good things as well as the unfortunate things. We need to identify in our thoughts. As for myself, I usually think that we will always face challenges regardless of the time. We should not be too pessimistic to think that there is no good times in the future. So in my thinking, as for development, there will always be conflicts, disputes, risks, and crises even. So we need to address all of these risks, all of these crises, and we will continue to develop. And as we develop, there will be other risks, new crises, and we shall continue to face them and to address them. And this is a cost of time. And as for our methodological thinking, this is my thought. It is the same as in a human's life, as well as in a country's future. And as for our world today, the challenges, of course, there will always be challenges. And not just challenges, we will face numerous challenges. But in addition to challenges, whether we will have opportunities, there will be plenty of opportunities for us opening to us. And so the question is, how do we seize these opportunities? We need to address all of the previous challenges in the most effective, in the most reasonable ways, with the methods that are best available to us. For example, like I said, we, for a country, we have both internal and external strengths. How do we harness these strengths? By our foreign policy, by our economic policies. And we also need to build on, to utilize what positive outcomes that we have been able to achieve. We need to put development, we need to put the people at the center, at the momentum of time, so that we could harness the positive changes. For example, despite the challenges that we're facing, for example, like the ones that we're discussing, but we have vast opportunities, like our traditional growth momentums, our impetus, for example, export and consumption, internal national consumption, like Prime Minister Li Qiang mentioned this morning, or we can also harness investment. We shall be able to renew these traditional momentums. And we also need to harness the new development models, for example, digital transformation, green economy, circular economy. We will open up new opportunities and new horizons without boundary. If we could tap into innovation, creativity, as well as reasonable and effective thinking. And again, I'm very optimistic because our resources begin from our thinking, from our thoughts. And the second one is from innovation. We need to put people in the center, in the impetus, in the momentum of change, and all the resources need to be harnessed from the people, from the businesses, so that we could address our challenges. Another point I'd like to make is, and this is very decisive to our success, that is our wisdom, our knowledge, our time, and our determination. And despite our challenges, current challenges, or challenges in the future, as long as we have our methodological, reasonable methodological thinking, and we apply these in the context of the international arena, in the context of our own economies, we will be able to find solutions to address the challenges, to reach effective cooperation. So we always stand ready to face with all of the challenges, but we should not lack faith or hope. And we need to have conviction in ourselves, in our thinking, in our wisdom, in our knowledge, in our insight, and our determination, so that we could turn all of the challenges into favorable opportunities. And the more pressure we suffer from, the more we need to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that is a perfect end on a very, in my view, very interesting conversation on an optimistic note, because there is some pessimism out there, but you can also argue, as the Prime Minister did, that the new technologies and also the new ways to then interact with each other can represent new growth opportunities and a paradigm shift maybe we're faced with the second industrial revolution in this context. So let's do as the Prime Minister of Vietnam, look at the glass half full instead of half empty. Thank you for your leadership. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.